Welcome to In the Zone. Alongside Miles Miller and Lucas Miller, I'm Owen Russell. With so much happening in the world of sports, we have quite a bit to cover this week. In the Zone starts now. With the first weekend of March Madness in the books, there were plenty of upsets, as we expected. First and foremost, Farley Dickinson became the second 16 seed ever to knock off a 1 seed. On top of that, Princeton made their bid for Cinderella Team of the Year. The Tigers made it 3 consecutive years a 15 seed has made it to the Sweet 16. Miles, your thoughts on an upset-filled weekend?
I love March Madness. I mean, this is what you live for. This is what you want to see. I mean, Furman beating Virginia, Arkansas beating Kansas, FDU beating Purdue. I think that was my favorite game to watch because I saw it as like a little David-Goliath matchup. You got the tallest guy in NCAA basketball against the shortest team. I mean, what else do you want from March Madness? And I mean, Pittsburgh knocked off Iowa State, and I think the biggest Cinderella ball, as we said, Princeton. I don't think anybody could have predicted Princeton moving on this far.
Not at all. Lucas, your thoughts on any of this?
I think for the most part, it was kind of shocking that some of the top teams weren't really performing as much as you expected them to. I think especially Purdue. That was a lot of people's title picks, and they lost to a 16 seed that no one saw it coming. Nope. I think the Princeton one over Arizona is a little less shocking, but Purdue, I mean, that was really, I think them and Houston were probably 2 of the biggest picks for the championship this year.
Absolutely. Honestly, to me, it was a little bit surprising to see Michigan State advance over Marquette. I don't know about you guys, but I really did think Marquette was going to be one of those teams that got to the Elite Eight, Final Four. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, with Marquette, I think they always start just weak. They start weak when they got to start off strong. And I know Cam Jones was getting buckets. He's doing his thing. But I think Michigan State was way too fundamentally sound for them. I mean, with Tom Izzo and that program over there, that defense was crazy. And Walker, their point guard, was balling out. I mean,
I think he had like 23 points in that game or something. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like he was shooting threes, mid-range. I mean, he looked like the next Kimball Walker, in my opinion, when he was at UConn. But I mean, that's just my opinion, my guess.
I think with Marquette, I think they just ran into a bad matchup there. I mean, Joey Hauser had 10 rebounds in that game. I think they were just getting beat up and down the floor. We didn't expect that.
Not at all. Well, speaking of those upsets, guys, Kevin Harlan had a legendary call in the closing moments of Furman's incredible upset over Virginia.
4 guards out there, along with Cedric, are their best free throw shooter. Clark in a straight checker. He needs to do that. He threw it away. In, Bernice. Furman leads. Timeout, Virginia. Did we just see what we think we just saw? Wow.
Now, on top of that, there were some head coaching vacancies fulfilled following the first 2 rounds of the tournament, with Rick Pitino taking the job at St. John's, leaving Iona, and Ed Cooley leaving Providence for Georgetown. Lucas, your thoughts on these moves?
I think the one that sticks out to me the most right now is the Ed Cooley move, actually. I think people are kind of shocked that he moved from one Big East team to another since he's been with Providence for a long time. I thought maybe he was going to go out of conference, but Georgetown hasn't had a lot of success in the recent years. Maybe he can spark something into that program. Miles, what do you think?
Especially since they got rid of, was it Patrick Ewing? And, I mean, his first season when he coached at Georgetown was horrible. He went 0-19 in conference, but, like, you can't do that as a college coach. Like, you're going to be fired. And I think he didn't live up to his legacy.
Not at all. One of the moves that I also thought was big in the head coaching world was Iona replacing Rick Pitino. They got Tobin Anderson, the head coach of Farley Dickinson University. That was, to me, that was a good sign for Iona. And really a symbol of how awesome Farley Dickinson did in this tournament.
Yeah,
shows how far effort can go.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that coach I didn't really know much about until they kind of popped up in the scene. You see all this stuff on social media with his, like, you know, pre-game speeches and stuff. But Iona, they made March Madness this year. Maybe they can, you know, just kind of turn off of that and keep going with a new coach.
I think the future's bright for all these teams, really. Well, taking a look at Thursday's Sweet 16 matchups, Lucas, which game intrigues you the most? And which team has the best path to the Final Four?
I think the game that intrigues me the most is actually Michigan State and Kansas State. First of all, Michigan State, you probably didn't predict that upset with them over Marquette.
No.
Kansas State is looking like a really tough team right now, too. I think these are two programs that we really didn't think would maybe get this far, and it's just kind of a test of who can persevere now. The other one that I think from the path for the Final Four, like you said, I think UCLA I like the most right now to get there.
Miles?
I'd say one of the games I'm excited to see is the Arkansas-UConn game because I think both those teams are very fast-paced teams. Like, they love to push the ball up the court. Arkansas has great defense coming off that win against Kansas. I mean, it's just going to be a good weekend. I mean, UConn has great offense, great skilled players, and they're old enough to know now and mature enough to know what to make in a decision.
I think Arkansas, just to go off of that, I think they match up very well with UConn. I mean, they held Kansas's, I think, 3 leading scorers to a pretty low amount of points, and they only had like one scorer who went over 20 points, I think. UConn is a very tough team. Though I think that's a great matchup between Arkansas and UConn. I think coming out of that region, I think either Gonzaga, UCLA, or UConn, whichever one moves on, will be the national championship, in my opinion.
Well, guys, I think we're really forgetting about the big battle in the Sweet 16, the battle of the juggernauts, Creighton versus Princeton. Do you think that the Cinderella run can keep going?
I'm sorry, but Princeton, y'all got to go. Y'all got to get up out of here. Creighton has this 7-footer, I think. He may be a freshman or sophomore, I'm not sure, but I mean, he's 7 foot. How do you stop that? Especially when they run their offense through him, through different pick and rolls. And I know Nimhard was throwing so many oops to him. I mean, there's no way you can stop that.
Well, it's going to definitely be interesting to see. Well, these Friday Sweet 16 matchups do have potential to be amazing as well. Miles, your thoughts on these games? Anything?
I'm looking forward to the Texas Xavier game. Excuse me. I'm a big Texas fan, not to be biased or anything, but Xavier puts up a lot of points on offense. And Texas plays great defense. I mean, it's going to be a great game, a high-scoring game. What are your thoughts?
I think it's going to be pretty high-scoring as well. Really, all these games look pretty intriguing to me, Xavier, Texas especially. The one I'm looking at is Miami versus Houston because I had Miami actually going to the Final Four in a few of my brackets. I think that Houston, I haven't heard too much about them, but who knows? Lucas, anything?
I think just to add to the Xavier-Texas game, is it Dylan Dessou on Texas?
Yep.
He had a big game against Penn State. I think he matches up very well with Xavier. They have 2 big players. It's Adam Kunkel and Jack Nunji. That matchup between the 2 of them and Dylan Dessou as the leading scorer for Texas, that will be big on Friday.
Especially when you have Serge Jabari Rice and Marcus Carr in that backcourt.
Definitely. I think it's more of the front court of Xavier going up against the backcourt of Texas, and I think that's probably the best matchup of the Sweet 16.
It's going to be one great game to see.
Oh, absolutely. NFL free agency is heating up, but so is NBA action. We'll have the latest in the NFL and NBA after this short break. Action in the NBA is heating up, and there were some great games on Tuesday night with playoff implications. Donovan Mitchell scored 31 to lead Cleveland to a 115-109 win over Brooklyn. The Nets are now in a bit of trouble as they're just a half game ahead of Miami for 6th place. Miles, the Nets are on the verge of being sent to the play-in tournament. Your thoughts?
Every win counts at this point. Like, it's either win or go home, especially when you have the Heat, the Hawks, the Raptors, and the Bulls all competing for that play-in spot, and you still have the other teams behind them. You have to win, you have to compete, and you have to play defense because there have been a lot of high-scoring games in the NBA this season where no defense has been played. What do you think?
I think kind of going off that everyone is scoring a lot. I think right now, with how little margins, some of the top seeds in the West, some of the top seeds in the East, and some of the lower seeds in both, they're separated by very low margins. So it's really just going to be who can push the most going down this next stretch, going into April.
Who wants it more?
Yeah, who wants it more. I mean, Mitchell last night, he went crazy. The poster dunk, he had the Shamrock move. I mean, he just carried Cleveland to that win. That's a big win over a Brooklyn team who, like we said, could be getting sent to the play-in.
Yeah. I think it also makes a statement, too, in the NBA to say, like, we're not to be messed around with. Like, because I know 3 teams in the East, the Bucks, the 76ers, and the Celtics all made it, but the Cleveland Cavaliers are just putting their mark on the game and seeing what happens.
I love to see it. I've loved Cleveland since the LeBron days, so seeing them succeed without him or Kyrie overall, that's a pretty good thing to see.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to see how wide open it is in the West as well.
Yes.
I mean, as of right now, I would say, who are the top ones? Maybe Dallas, maybe Denver. Memphis. But other than that, who's going to make the push and get in there at the end?
Well, speaking of the West, Sacramento is 4.5 games ahead of Phoenix for 3rd place right now, despite losing to Boston on Tuesday night. And the LA Clippers, on top of that, they suffered a tough loss to the Thunder on Tuesday night as well. Miles, the West is certainly interesting. Your thoughts?
I think right now the West is tighter than the East. Everybody in the West, especially for the playing game, are all within one game of each other. I mean, the Thunder, the Mavericks, the Timberwolves all have 36 wins, and the Utah Jazz trail at the 10 seed with 35. I mean, if you lose, you can absolutely not make the playoffs, and it's proven right now. Yeah. Your thoughts?
I mean, unfortunately, I didn't really check the standings earlier today, but it's looking like I think the Sacramento's, just to see them succeeding this year is so awesome. Sabonis and Fox together, what a dream team.
Yeah, if the Kings can learn to play better defense, I think they'll be better off because a lot of the teams just been putting up more numbers greater than them and scoring more points, but they're just not playing enough defense.
Lucas, anything about that?
It's pretty incredible to see how close all of the standings are right now, especially in the West. I mean, I would have never thought that the Kings have made it this far, that they're the third best team in the West. I mean,
never in a million years.
I think through the past couple of years, you would see like maybe 2 or 3 teams in each conference, and then everyone else just kind of like fitting in. Yeah. Right now, it doesn't really seem like that. You know, you have Milwaukee and Boston and Philly, and then the other side, you might have like Denver, Memphis, whoever, and it's just they're just battling. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see. Well, NFL free agency, to say the least, has been absolutely nuts. Some unlikely teams have made big moves recently. The Houston Texans and Detroit Lions have made a plethora of moves as well, and so has Chicago and Carolina. Lucas, your thoughts?
I think every offseason we see this where there's these big moves, and some of them we have no clue why it happened. I think you said earlier this afternoon about the quarterback moves.
Yes.
The Raiders brought in Jimmy Garoppolo. You saw Jacoby Brissett to Washington. It's not huge, but the whole Aaron Rodgers thing right now as well, you don't know what's happening with that. I think the biggest thing that I've seen so far was the Chicago Bears move for DJ Moore. That one, because it shook up the draft so much.
The first pick.
Yeah, now we can have even more controversial topics of what quarterback is going to go where in that draft.
Especially when the Panthers just signed Andy Dalton too, which doesn't make sense if you're going to select the quarterback in the draft, or they're using him to train him.
Definitely.
And just get him better, you know what I'm saying?
Definitely think it could be for the training here. Well, one of the big signings that really, really intrigued me was C.J. Gardner-Johnson to the Lions this year. I mean, the Eagles, they've already had their entire defense just falling apart in front of us. But losing Gardner-Johnson especially hurts. Do you have any thoughts on that?
The Eagles defense, I mean, they're going to be great regardless, I mean, especially with the coaching, but you're losing all these key pieces. I think they're just going to keep on shrinking down until they ain't going to have all their stars left, and they're going to, I mean, the NFL this year and the free agency can best be described in like one phrase: new places, new faces.
Yes.
Everybody's going which way for the money. And I mean, you still have big names out there, like you said, and like Lamar Jackson, for instance.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there's still speculation on where he's going to go and what the Ravens do, but hey, we'll see what happens.
Well, speaking of quarterbacks, there's been plenty of moves in the QB market to start free agency. Most recently, Baker Mayfield has signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Miles, your thoughts on this move amongst other quarterback signings this offseason?
Why? Just why? I mean, you have all these quarterbacks coming in through the draft who you can develop your team after and just start like all over. And yet you have teams like the Bucs going after Baker Mayfield, who in my opinion, he still may have a little bit in the tank. But I see so much more potential in the other quarterbacks that are coming into the draft. What do you guys think?
Well, as a Browns fan for most of my life now, I love Baker Mayfield. I think he's definitely got that dog in him. But definitely going to the Buccaneers, replacing Tom Brady, he's going to have big shoes to fill.
Big shoes to fill.
And I really think it could mean that the Buccaneers are looking to draft a quarterback too. Somebody that could compete with Baker to get that starting job. Because I just don't see him being the starter that long term. Lucas, anything?
I kind of see like the same thing with Miles said. Why do it? But at the same time, you just lost Tom Brady, who's arguably the greatest quarterback of all time. You know,
Yeah.
I think what they could do if they do draft another quarterback and they keep Baker, kind of like let Baker kind of have the reins for the first couple weeks, and then let the younger guy come in when they're ready. I think if they're going to go into a rebuild type of thing, signing Baker might be a good idea if you're going to bring in another quarterback to develop.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah. Now with an update in Marauder Athletics, we send it over to Nicole Dalton.
Thanks, Owen. Welcome back, Marauders. I'm Nicole Dalton, and I've got a full recap from this past weekend in Ville sports. Spring sports are in full swing here at Millersville, with baseball having success this past week, winning all 4 games they played against Kutztown University, improving their record to 22 wins and only 4 losses. On the 17th, they played the Golden Bears at home and handed Kutztown starter Jake Zabkowski his first loss of the season. The Marauders were able to total 10 hits and 6 walks, resulting in a 9-2 victory. The next day, they played a doubleheader and beat Kutztown yet again, 8-3 and 8-4. With the quintet of Jimmy Losh, Brent Taylor, Sam Morris, Thomas Caulfield, and John Siebert, the Marauders totaled 7 RBIs and 7 runs scored. In the second game, going 11 innings, the Golden Bears were down to their final out in the 8th inning, when Jimmy Curley had a 2-run double that would tie the game 3-3, which became a threat to the Marauders in the bottom of the 9th. The Marauders would go scoreless for 6 consecutive innings, but John Siebert and Chase Simmons helped to score 5 runs in the 11th inning, giving the Marauders the 8-4 victory. Men's tennis ended their 6-game losing streak, beating Davis and Elkin University 4-3, getting their first win of the spring semester. This improved them to 2 wins and 6 losses for the season. They will play Bloomsburg next on March 25th. The softball team suffered 2 losses for both of their doubleheaders this past week, falling 15-4 in the first game and 9-3 in the second game. In their first doubleheader against Georgian Court, Game 1 began with 2 scoreless innings until Elise Angelo and Victoria Fuss would score a 2-run homer, cutting Gregorian Court's lead. Gregorian Court would outscore the Marauders 10-2 the rest of the game, giving way for a 15-4 loss. The second game started with a GCU lead scoring in the first inning. They would score 2 more runs in the second, making their lead 3-0. Though, infielder Gabby Turner would cut the lead to 2. Both teams each scored 2 runs in the third inning, making the score 5-3. But GCU would outscore the Marauders 4-0 the rest of the game, giving a 9-3 loss. During their second doubleheader against East Stroudsburg, the Marauders would fall 3-0 and 9-1. Best of luck to all Marauders competing as the spring season gets underway. After the break, we will send it back to the desk for an update in the World Baseball Classic and the NHL. In the Zone, we'll be right back.
Welcome back to In the Zone. Zach Humphreys and Travis Schuster now join us for the latest in baseball and hockey. The World Baseball Classic was one for the record books. Team USA, aka the best team to assemble on a baseball diamond, led by Mike Trout, along with Mookie Betts and Trey Turner. After a faulty loss to Mexico, USA dominated its way through the tournament. With a close back-and-forth game against Venezuela in the quarterfinals and a slugfest against Cuba in the semis, USA was set to face Japan in the finals, led by Shohei Ohtani. Unfortunately, the USA couldn't get the bat going when it mattered most, and Japan won a tightly contested 3-2 ball game. Zach, the World Baseball Classic seemed to be more than just some exhibition games. What were your thoughts?
I loved watching the entire tournament from the jump. I mean, like you said, I think this was the best team to possibly be assembled, especially in the United States. There were stars from the. I don't even know how a coach can even make a lineup out of the teams that. I mean, you mentioned Mike Trout, Mookie Betts. You've also got JT Realmuto, the best catcher in the league. You've got 4 stud outfielders along with Cedric Mullins and Kyle Tucker, who Kyle Tucker can't even start because he's got Mookie and Mike Trout. I mean, This team was incredible. They played great all the way up until Japan when, like you said, the bats just couldn't get it going. I mean, USA 0 for 7 with runners in scoring position. That's not going to get it done. I have to give major props to Japan for their pitching, though. They pitched fantastic. It's just, the bats just couldn't get it done.
Yeah, and if you'll remember, for the start of that Japan game, they were scheduled to start Yu Darvish on the mound, and they quickly changed that right before because the players know Yu Darvish, and like they call this the dream team for U.S. It was a dream team in terms of the batters, not so much the pitchers. You look at the pitching for U.S. Okay, just imagine this: if we had Jake DeGrom, Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, I know I just named 2 Phillies, Max Scherzer, but imagine we had a lineup of 4 aces in the lineup compared to the mediocre, somewhat mid-play pitchers Team USA had.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally agree. I would say that our ace in this instance was Adam Wainwright, who, yes, he is a very solid pitcher. But after that, I mean, we have Aaron Loop, who pitched pretty good against Japan. He only pitched for 2 outs, but he got out of a tight jam.
Was he the one that, I can't remember exactly, was he the one that had to come in for a starter who only went like 1 inning and then loaded the bases right up?
Yes, that was Merrill Kelly who ended up going out,
it.
starting that. The first pitch he threw got taken deep into left center field and then decided to load the bases and Aaron Loop had to go out there and save the day. I mean, he did, but in order to do that, he did also give up a run as well.
Yeah.
So that just kind of, that little bit kind of stuck out against the U.S.
Let's talk about the offense they were able to generate. I joked on Twitter after they lost, the Philadelphia Phillies should not have to take on Team Japan all by themselves. You look at, okay, Trey Turner got the scoring started for Team USA, crushing a home run, his 5th of the tournament. Like, he led the tournament with 5 home runs. Like, the person in second only had 3. Okay, and then after Trey Turner, it was Kyle Schwarber. I mean, the Phillies just had to carry the country once again on their back, and unfortunately, the rest of the team couldn't generate any offense.
That's a great point. I mean, you probably loved watching it when Trey Turner decided to hit 2 home runs against Venezuela. One of them was
a grand slam.
Crushing grand slam.
Top of the 8th inning, scores 7-5, bases are loaded. Here comes Trey Turner. Boom! It's gone.
Trey Turner played amazing during a stretch from Venezuela through Cuba and then even against Japan. I mean, like you said, he even homered against Japan. He homered twice against Cuba in that slugfest. 14-2 was the total. Goodness gracious. And then Venezuela, I mean, like you said, that grand slam was so electric. He even commented that he's been in the World Series before. He's played a handful of baseball games, and that was the loudest he's ever heard that stadium. I mean, and people were comparing this to preseason games in the NFL. This World Baseball Classic was something to watch.
You can't compare World Baseball Classic to preseason games. It's like the World Series, except I mean, some players might value World Series more, some players might value World Baseball Classic more, but you're still playing for a championship. You're playing to represent your country, and we saw multiple players on every team just leave everything out there on the field.
I definitely want to give props to Team Japan, though. They played great throughout the entire tournament. It kind of got overshadowed by the U.S. considering we are in the U.S., but I mean, Shohei had an amazing tournament. I mean, Kazuma Okamoto played fantastic. I mean, that whole team they don't have the star-studded lineup like we did, but Team Japan definitely
And let's touch on the cinematic moment. You had Mike Trout batting against Shohei Ohtani. I mean, you just couldn't, the script writers couldn't have wrote it any better than that.
Without a doubt. I mean, seeing 100, then 102 straight out of his hand, and then seeing a near unhittable slider. Yeah, that's
what we love baseball for.
Shohei just got the best of round 1.
Once again, congrats to Team Japan on that. Moving over to hockey, there were some great games in the NHL on Tuesday night. Carolina and New York gave us what might be a postseason preview in a tightly contested game. Carolina scored 3 goals in the 3rd period to take down the Rangers 3-2. Travis, that was an incredible game, but wouldn't you like to see a postseason series with these two teams?
The answer is yes, because these two teams, when they meet, Metropolitan Division rivals, it's going to be entertaining every time they play. And we got a preview of what playoffs looked like last season in the second round of the playoffs when the Rangers beat the Hurricanes in round 2 of the playoffs. After the Hurricanes were up 2 games, Rangers come back, tie it 2-2. Hurricanes win the next game, then the Rangers win the next 2, stage off elimination. I mean, that was just a preview of what those two teams are just a preview of what these two teams are now. The Rangers, you look at the Rangers' moves this season, they stacked up on players. You look at the Hurricanes, they're stacking up on players. And, you know, a playoff series between these two teams, it's inevitable. They won't meet in the first round. They'll probably meet in the second or third round, but it's just going to be inevitable. Like Rangers got Vladimir Tarasenko stacking up. Hurricanes, Jesse Puljujarvi in the trade deadline stacking up. And so far the season series right now, it's 2-1 in favor of the Rangers, but they have another game tomorrow night against each other, a home-and-home series.
Ooh, that's going to be good.
Yeah, I believe they were just at New York. Now they're back home in Carolina.
Gotcha.
So the Hurricanes have a chance to tie up the season series here, and this could be tomorrow night's game could be a preview of Game 1 of their playoff series.
Really excited.
And I mean, even when you looked at the beginning of that game, the way New York seemed to have control throughout the entire first period on the offensive side, they were living on the Hurricanes' half of the ice. But I mean, like you said, the way that Carolina was able to eventually figure it out in the second period, I would say it was even. But then third period, man, it was all Carolina.
You gotta give credit. You gotta play a full 60-minute game of hockey, and unfortunately for the Rangers, the third period just fell apart on them.
The Hurricanes, huge props. I mean, even on the offensive side and defensive side, they stepped up on both sides. It was just disappointing for New York to falter there in the end.
I mean, someone's got to lose at the end of the day. So, well, elsewhere in the NHL, it was overtimes galore. Minnesota knocked off New Jersey in overtime 2-1. Columbus took down the Capitals 7-6, as well as Seattle beating Dallas in overtime 5-4. Travis, Tuesday night was an insane night in the NHL. Your thoughts?
Okay, let's start with this game. Wild versus the Devils, 3-2 overtime win for the Wild. Both teams were playing for first place in their own divisions. Okay, the Devils came in 97 points last night, 1 point back of the Hurricanes for first place of the Metro, and the Wild came in 2 points behind Dallas with 88 points. Behind 2 points behind Dallas for first place in the Central Division. You saw both teams put it all out there on the ice. And when you get teams like that, when you get teams that are finally playing for something, you get entertaining hockey games like this. Okay, just look at this. Philip Gustafson, the goaltender for the Wild, had to stop 46 shots to win the Wild the game.
I mean, when I was watching that game, I mean, it took them 3 periods to finally find the back of the net. It was impressive to see both defensive showings, and I mean, like you said, the way that the Devils were able to be that dominant on the offensive side of the ice. I mean, 47 shots, and he saved 46 of them. That is so impressive.
48 shots, but still, the story is, okay, Philip Gustafson bailed the Minnesota Wild out. He's the reason why the Wild won. Okay, let's shift games now to the Blue Jackets and Capitals. I did not expect to see what we saw from the Columbus Blue Jackets.
God.
A bottom place seed, you can call it an upset. Capitals aren't that strong this season, but the Blue Jackets had a rally back from being down 3-0 in the first period.
Insane.
That's just incredible.
That was probably my favorite game of the night. The way the Wild and Devils ended in a crazy way in overtime. But I mean, this hockey game was a football score. I mean, anybody would enjoy it. The way that both offenses were just clicking. I mean, of course the goaltenders may have struggled here and there, but I mean, there were great shots left and right. Offenses were clicking. I mean, there was not a sign of faltering on both sides
and
of
let's
offense.
just put it this way. Washington has something to play for. He's currently 6 points out of a wild card spot. Blue Jackets got nothing to play for. They're the favorite to get Connor Bedard in the draft this season. But really, you had to be really upset if you're a Capitals fan to watch them blow a lead to the bottom place team in the league.
Doesn't give you confidence to go to the Stanley Cup there.
And then shifting to our final game we're talking about, the Kraken versus the Dallas Stars. Dallas forcing overtime, but the Kraken winning it in OT. I want to talk about the ending. I know we talked about last game was the favorite game. This is my favorite game of the night. Okay, Jamie Benn of the Dallas Stars, the captain, tied the game with 0.7 seconds to go in regulation. It was one of the most wild goals I've ever seen. Okay, you have Miro Heiskanen, I can never say his name, standing at the top of the right circle, firing it in. Jamie Benn's down low behind the net, clearing out the defenseman out in front and just slamming home the rebound.
The ending to Tuesday night was so impressive, especially considering now that the Kraken were able to beat the Stars, which is help setting up the Wild. I mean, the Tuesday night was incredible.
We had this. Okay, we have both teams trying to hang on to a wild card spot. Seattle's trying to hang on to their second wild card spot, and Dallas is trying to hang on to first place. I love late season hockey because both teams really put everything out there on the ice to try and make one final push for the playoffs.
It's going to be interesting to see that going forward, guys. Well, that will do it for this week's edition of In the Zone. For our entire crew here at In the Zone, I'm Owen Russell. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week for more.